Mother confronts Trump about healthcare. The truth about her son leaves the rally silent. The hospital corridor lights flickered with their usual harsh fluorescence as Sarah Martinez walked toward her son's room. It was just past 7 a.m., and she'd barely slept 3 hours before heading back to St. Mary's Children's Hospital. The Uyuru night shift nurse Linda gave her a sympathetic smile as she passed the nurse's station. "Morning, Sarah. He had a good night. Even ate some Jell-O around midnight." Sarah managed a weak smile. "Thanks, Linda. You heading home soon?" "Just finishing up my charts. Hey, did you get a chance to talk to the financial office about that assistance program I mentioned?" Sarah's throat tightened. "Yeah, we don't qualify. Make too much for assistance, not enough to pay the bills. Crazy, right?" Linda reached across the counter and squeezed her hand. "Honey, you keep fighting. Something's gotta give." Sarah nodded, fighting back tears as she continued down the hallway. Room 412. She'd memorized every crack in the wall leading to it, every scuff on the floor tiles. The door was slightly ajar, and she could hear the morning cartoons playing inside. "Mom!" Miguel's face lit up as she entered. Even with his hair gone from the chemo and his skin pale as the hospital sheets, his smile could still light up the whole room. "You're early." "Couldn't sleep, mijo." She bent down to kiss his forehead, noting how his hospital gown seemed to hang even looser than yesterday. "How's my brave boy?" "I'm okay. Dr. Adams came by super early. Said my numbers are better today." Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, running her hand gently over his arm where the IV was attached. "That's great news, baby. Did you eat anything?" "Linda gave me Jell-O. Red kind. My favorite." He paused, studying her face with that too-old look that broke her heart. "Mom, you look tired. Did you take your anxiety pills?" "Don't you worry about me, Miguel. That's my job. Worrying about you." The morning routine unfolded as it had for the past 3 weeks. Sarah helped Miguel with his breakfast when the food service brought it, made silly faces at the oatmeal to get him to eat just a little more. They watched cartoons together, and she pretended not to notice when he dozed off mid-show, the chemotherapy sapping his energy. Around 9 a.m., Dr. Adams returned for morning rounds. Sarah straightened up in her chair, trying to look put together, despite having slept in her clothes. "Good morning, Martinez family." Dr. Adams smiled, but Sarah had learned to read the subtle tensions in medical staff's expressions. Something was off. "Miguel, how are you feeling about trying to walk to the playroom today?" "Can I, Mom? Please?" "Let's hear what Dr. Adams has to say first, okay?" The doctor pulled up a chair and Sarah's stomach clenched. Doctors only sat down when they had difficult news. "Sarah, could we step into the hallway for a moment?" Miguel's face fell. "I hate when you guys do that. I'm not a baby." "You're right. You're not." Dr. Adams agreed. "But some of this is boring insurance stuff your mom needs to hear about." In the hallway, Dr. Adams didn't waste time. "The latest blood work shows the first-line treatment isn't being as effective as we'd hoped. There's a newer medication, Kymriah, that's shown excellent results in cases like Miguel's. The problem is insurance." Sarah finished, her voice flat. "Yes, it's not on their approved list yet. We can appeal, but that takes time. And..." He hesitated. "How much?" "The treatment course is $475,000. Sarah felt her knees buckle. The wall behind her was the only thing keeping her upright. That's more than my house, more than everything I own put together. There are some clinical trials we can look into. The waiting lists are long, but how long does he have?" The words came out as barely a whisper. "Without this medicine, how long?" Dr. Adams's professional demeanor cracked slightly. "Sarah, we don't need to..." "Please, I need to know. Without more aggressive treatment?" 6 months. Maybe 8. The fluorescent lights suddenly seemed too bright. The hallway too narrow. Sarah pressed her hands against the cool wall, focusing on breathing, just breathing. I'll get the appeals process started, Dr. Adams said gently. And I'll have our social worker come by with information about charities and other resources. Sarah nodded mechanically, but her mind was already racing through options. Her teacher's salary barely covered the regular bills. Her parents had emptied their modest savings helping with the initial treatments. The house had no more equity to borrow against. Back in Miguel's room, he was sitting up straighter, trying to look strong. What did Dr. Adams say, Mom? Just boring insurance stuff, like he said. The lie tasted bitter. Hey, want to try walking to the playroom? You're doing that thing with your face. What thing? When you're pretending everything's okay but it's not. He patted the bed beside him. Sit with me, Mom. Sarah sat, and her 12-year-old son took her hand in his thin one. When had he gotten so perceptive? So wise beyond his years? Remember when Dad left? Miguel said quietly. You did the same face then, but we made it through that, right? Sarah pulled him close, careful of the IV lines. We sure did, mijo. So we'll make it through this too. You and me. She held him until he fell asleep again, cartoon voices chattering softly in the background. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Another alert from the bank about an overdraft fee. She ignored it. Later that afternoon, while Miguel was having tests, Sarah retreated to the hospital chapel. She wasn't particularly religious, but it was quiet there, and the hard wooden pews felt appropriately uncomfortable for her mood. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her mother. Mama, I can't talk long. How's our boy? The same. Sarah's voice cracked. The medicine's not working like they hoped. Dios mío. What are the doctors saying? There's a new treatment. Insurance won't cover it. It costs more than... She couldn't even say the number. Your father and I could sell the car. No, Mama. You've done enough. You need that car for work. After hanging up, Sarah scrolled through her newsfeed, trying to distract herself. A headline caught her eye. Trump campaign rally announced. For tomorrow in Cedar Rapids. She clicked the link. The familiar campaign promises jumped out at her. Better health care for all Americans. Fighting Big Pharma. Protecting families. Sarah remembered standing in line to vote in 2020, full of hope. Trump had promised to take on the drug companies, to make health care affordable. Miguel had gone with her to vote, excited to be part of the process, even though he was too young to cast a ballot himself. Look, Mom, he'd said, pointing to a campaign sign. He's going to make America great again. That means you won't have to work 2 jobs anymore, right? Now, staring at the rally announcement, something shifted inside her. The chapel's silence felt different, less peaceful, more like the calm before a storm. Her phone buzzed one more time. Another medical bill marked urgent. She opened it with trembling fingers, even though she knew what it would say. The numbers blurred through her tears. Past due amount. 28,476 to 33. Sarah stood up, her legs unsteady. She walked to the small altar and picked up one of the prayer cards left there. On the back, someone had written, God gives his hardest battles to his strongest soldiers. She set the card back down. God might choose his soldiers, but mothers chose their battles too. And Sarah had just chosen hers. Walking back to Miguel's room, she passed the gift shop. In the window was a red MAGA hat, probably left over from 2020, marked down to half price. Sarah stopped, staring at it for a long moment. Then she went inside and bought it. What's that, Mom? Miguel asked when she returned to his room. Just something I need for tomorrow. She tucked the hat into her purse. How are you feeling about pizza for dinner? The cafeteria kind, not the good kind. Sorry. Mom, when can I go home? The question hit her like a physical blow. Soon, mijo. The doctors just need to... You're doing the face again. Sarah sat on his bed and took his hand. Even that small movement seemed to tire him now. Miguel, I need you to be brave for me. Braver than you've ever been. Can you do that? He nodded solemnly. But you have to be brave too, okay? I will, baby. I promise. She squeezed his hand. I'm going to fix this. Whatever it takes. That night, after Miguel had fallen asleep, Sarah sat in the uncomfortable recliner beside his bed, listening to the steady beep of monitors. She took out her phone and pulled up the rally information again. Free admission. Doors open at 5 p.m. She looked at her sleeping son, memorizing every detail of his face. Then she opened her camera and took a picture. Then another. And another. Tomorrow would change everything. She just didn't know how yet. The night shift dragged on. Around midnight, Miguel stirred restlessly. Mom? His voice was barely a whisper. I'm here, mijo. Tell me about when I was little. The baseball story. Sarah smiled in the dim room. Again? You've heard it so many times. Please? She moved to sit on the edge of his bed, careful of the tubes. Well, you were 6 years old and your dad had just bought you your first real baseball glove. Remember how big it was on your little hand? Miguel nodded sleepily. You insisted on sleeping with it. Wouldn't take it off for anything. Then your team had that big game against the Rangers, and you were so nervous. I threw up in the dugout. Miguel mumbled with a faint smile. Twice. Coach Martinez wanted to bench you, but you begged to play. Said you'd never forgive yourself if you didn't try. Did I really say that? At 6? You've always been an old soul, mijo. She stroked his arm gently. Then you went out there, sick as a dog, and hit that home run. It was just a single, Mom. In my memory, it's a home run. And you know what? That wasn't even the best part. The best part was watching you round first base with the biggest smile I'd ever seen. Because you'd faced your fear. You'd done the scary thing anyway. Miguel's eyes were getting heavy. Mom? Yes, baby. Are you scared now? Sarah felt her throat tighten. Yes. But you know what? I learned from you. Sometimes we have to do the scary thing anyway. Because of baseball? Because of love. After Miguel fell back asleep, Sarah pulled out her phone again. She opened Facebook and typed Trump healthcare promises into the search bar. Video after video popped up. She clicked on one from 2020. We're going to have healthcare that is so much better and so much less expensive. Nobody will have to choose between medicine and putting food on the table. Nobody. She clicked another. The drug companies are getting away with murder. We're going to stop it. We're going to make them lower their prices. Believe me. Sarah felt her anger rising with each clip. She'd believed him. So many people had. Her neighbor Carol had lost her house paying for her husband's heart surgery. Her colleague Tom was rationing his insulin. And now, Miguel. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Need me to come sit with him tomorrow. Sarah stared at the message for a long moment. If she told her mother about the rally, she'd try to talk her out of it. Everyone would. They'd say it was pointless, maybe even dangerous. What could one person do anyway? She texted back, No thanks, Mama. We're good. Around 2 a.m., Nurse Linda came in to check Miguel's vitals. Sarah, you should try to sleep. She whispered. The chair reclines. I know. Just 5 more minutes. Linda adjusted Miguel's blanket. Carol from billing was asking about you today. Said you haven't returned her calls. What's left to say? Insurance won't budge. The appeals process could take months. Months we don't. She couldn't finish the sentence. This country. Linda shook her head. 30 years I've been nursing. Used to be we'd just treat the patient, figure out the money later. Now it's all codes and approvals and… She trailed off, checking Miguel's IV. You know what burns me? Those drug company CEOs making millions while families like yours. Linda. Sarah interrupted quietly. Do you still have that picture? The one you took of Miguel last week when the therapy Dog visited. Sure do. Want me to send it to you? Please. After Linda left, Sarah created a new folder on her phone. Rally. She added the therapy dog photo, along with the ones she'd taken earlier. Then she opened her camera and took a video of Miguel, sleeping, the soft beep of monitors in the background. Just in case. She whispered to herself, though she wasn't sure in case of what. Dawn came too quickly. Sarah watched the sun rise through the hospital window, painting Cedar Rapids in shades of pink and gold. It looked almost peaceful from up here. Normal. As if somewhere in this city, drug company executives weren't sitting in boardrooms, deciding her son's fate with cold spreadsheets and profit margins. Miguel woke up as breakfast arrived. Pancakes. Today, he said with forced enthusiasm. Hospital pancakes are better than no pancakes, right? Sarah helped him sit up. That's my optimist. Mom, your clothes are all wrinkled. Did you sleep in them again? Maybe. Don't tell the fashion police. You should go home, take a shower, change. I'll be okay. Sarah hesitated. She did need to prepare for the rally, but leaving him. I mean it, Miguel insisted. Linda's here until 3, and I've got physical therapy at 10. You won't miss anything except me sleeping and complaining about hospital food. Miguel Martinez, when did you get so grown up? He grinned weakly. Someone has to take care of you. Sarah gathered her things, trying to keep her movements casual. Normal. Just a mother going home to change, not a woman preparing for battle. I love you, mijo. To the moon and back. And to infinity and beyond. He finished their old ritual. Mom? Yes? Whatever you're planning, be careful, okay? Sarah froze. What makes you think I'm planning something? Because I know you. And you've got that look. Like when Mrs. Peterson said I couldn't be in the school play because of my asthma. And you went to the school board. And you got to be tree number 3. Best tree in the whole forest. He paused. Just come back to me, okay? Sarah hugged him, memorizing the feel of him in her arms. Always, baby. Always. Walking to her car in the hospital parking lot, Sarah pulled out the MAGA hat and stared at it. The morning sun made the red fabric seem almost bright enough to burn. Chapter 2. Breaking point. The line outside the Cedar Rapids Event Center stretched for blocks. Sarah stood in it, the MAGA hat pulled low over her eyes. Miguel's medical bills folded in her purse. Around her, vendors hawked merchandise and supporters chatted excitedly. First Trump rally? A woman beside her asked, wearing a bedazzled American flag t-shirt. Sarah nodded, her throat tight. Oh, honey, you're in for a treat. I'm Margaret, by the way. Been to 12 of these. Nothing like it. The energy, the hope. She leaned closer. Between us, I'm praying he announces new healthcare plans. My grandson's diabetes supplies. She shook her head. I'm Sarah. The words felt strange in her dry mouth. And yes, healthcare. That's why I'm here too. 4 hours they stood in line. Sarah listened to stories from others. Medical bankruptcies, insurance denials, impossible choices. Each story stoked the fire building inside her. Should have brought water. Margaret fanned herself with a flyer. Getting mighty warm. Sarah barely felt the heat. Her phone buzzed. A text from Linda. Miguel asking for you. Having a rough day. Called the doctor. Her hands trembled as she typed. Coming right. After this. Tell him I love him. Everything okay, dear? Margaret touched her arm. You've gone pale. My son. Sarah's voice cracked. He's in the hospital. Cancer. Margaret's face softened. Lord have mercy. How old? 12. Same as my Tommy. The one with diabetes. She squeezed Sarah's hand. We'll pray for him, honey. Finally, the doors opened. The crowd surged forward, excitement building. Security checked bags. Sarah's heart pounded as they looked through her purse. but they only cared about weapons, not papers or phones. Inside, the arena was a sea of red hats and flags. Music blasted from speakers. Lee Greenwood's "God Bless the USA." People sang, along, swaying. Sarah found a spot halfway back, Margaret beside her. A perfect view! Margaret beamed. Oh, look! They're setting up the teleprompters. Won't be long now. Sarah checked her phone again. A picture from Linda. Miguel in his bed, looking paler than this morning but managing a weak smile. The caption, read, "Doctor increased pain meds. He's resting now." Beautiful boy. Margaret glimpsed the photo. What's his name? Miguel. Sarah's fingers traced his face on the screen. He loves baseball. Used to play pitcher. Used to? The chemo. It takes so much out of him. More people pressed in around them. The arena filled with chants of USA, USA. Sarah felt like she was underwater. Everything distant and muffled. Young man in front of them turned around. Hey, you okay? You look like you might pass out. She's fine, Margaret answered, just excited. Right, Sarah? Sarah nodded mechanically. Her hand found the folded bills in her purse, clutching them like a lifeline. The lights dimmed. The crowd roared. A voice boomed over the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the 45th President of the United States. More music. More cheering. Trump strode onto the stage waving, soaking in the adoration. Sarah watched him through a haze of tears and rage. Cedar Rapids! His voice filled the arena. What a crowd! What a beautiful crowd! Margaret grabbed Sarah's arm, jumping up and down. Isn't it amazing? We're making America great again, folks, despite what the fake news media says. Trump launched into familiar themes. The border, the economy, his opponents. Sarah's phone buzzed again. Linda. Doctor wants to talk to you. Important. Call when you can. The words blurred as tears fell. Around her, people cheered and laughed at Trump's jokes. How could they laugh? How could any of this matter when children were dying? And let me tell you about healthcare. Trump continued. Nobody knows healthcare better than me. We're going to have the best healthcare. You're going to have so much choice. Sarah's hands began to shake. The drug companies are lowering their prices because of me. Ask anyone. We're winning. No, Sarah whispered. What's that, dear? Margaret leaned closer. It's all lies. Sarah's voice grew stronger. All of it. Sarah, honey. But something had broken loose inside her. All the fear, all the rage, all the sleepless nights watching her son suffer. It erupted like a volcano. Liar! The word tore from her throat, raw and primal. Heads turned. Security guards looked her way. Margaret grabbed her arm. Sarah, don't! But Sarah was already moving, pushing through the crowd toward the stage. She pulled Miguel's hospital, photos from her purse holding them high. My son is dying because of you. Her voice carried over the music. Look at him! Look what your promises did! The crowd parted, stunned. Security started moving in, but Sarah kept going, tears streaming down her face. You promised to help us! She was halfway to the stage now, Miguel's medical bills clutched. In her shaking hand. But the insurance companies are getting richer, and my son is getting sicker. She ripped off the MAGA hat, throwing it aside. Secret Service agents approached cautiously, hands raised. Ma'am, stop right there. No, he needs to see. Everyone needs to see. Sarah's voice broke. My boy is 12 years old. 12! And your great health care is killing him. The music had stopped. Trump stood at the podium, squinting into the crowd. The usual chants of USA, USA died in confused silence. Let her talk. It was Margaret's voice, cracking with emotion. Let the mother talk. Other voices joined in. Let her talk. Let her talk. Sarah kept walking, step by step, holding Miguel's photos like a shield. Her legs trembled so badly she could barely stand, but she wouldn't stop. Not now. Not when she'd come so far. A security guard reached for her arm. Ma'am, final warning. Sarah looked him in the eyes. I'm a mother fighting for her son's life. Are you really going to stop me? The guard hesitated, looking toward the stage for direction. In that moment of uncertainty, Sarah's voice filled the arena. You want to know what great healthcare looks like? I'll show you. She pulled out the stack of medical bills, her hands shaking. $38,000 for 1 round of chemo. Insurance denied. $47,000 for hospital stays. Denied. A new treatment that could save his life. $500,000. The numbers echoed through the suddenly silent arena. Trump stood at the podium, his expression unreadable. Sir, Sarah's voice, cracked with emotion. You looked us in the eyes last time, right here in Cedar Rapids. You promised us better health care, cheaper drugs. You said no one would have to choose between medicine and food. A woman in the front row started crying. Others shifted uncomfortably, some pulling out phones to record. My son Miguel. Sarah held up his photo higher. He believes in heroes, baseball players, teachers, presidents. He was so excited when I voted for you. Mom, he said, things will get better now. Her voice broke completely. But they didn't get better, did they? The drug companies raised their prices. The insurance companies got richer. And my boy, my beautiful boy. Margaret pushed through the crowd to stand beside her. I'm staying with her, she announced, to the security guards, taking Sarah's hand. From somewhere in the back, a man's voice called out, My daughter's insulin is $1,200 a month. Another voice, We lost our house paying for my wife's cancer treatment. The crowd's mood shifted. The usual campaign energy transformed into something raw, real, and uncomfortable. Trump finally spoke into the microphone. Security, let's hear what the woman has to say. Sarah's legs nearly gave out. Margaret steadied her as the security guard stepped back, creating a small space around them. 3 weeks ago, Sarah continued, her voice stronger now. The doctor told me there's a treatment that could save Miguel. But it costs more than I'll earn in 10 years. More than my house. More than everything I own. She pulled out her phone, opened her photos. This was him last Christmas, pitching for his baseball team. She held it up. This is him now, 12 years old and fighting for his life while insurance companies decide if he's worth saving. The giant screens above the stage, usually showing Trump's face, now displayed Sarah's phone photos. Miguel healthy and smiling in his baseball uniform. Miguel in his hospital bed, thin and pale. Someone in the crowd shouted, Give her the microphone. The chant spread. Give her the mic. Give her the mic. A campaign aide hurried to the podium, whispered something to Trump. He waved them away, studying Sarah with an intensity that made the air crackle with tension. You know what Miguel asked me yesterday? Sarah's voice carried even without a microphone. He asked when he could go home. What was I supposed to tell him? That home might be gone soon because of medical bills? That his mother can't afford to save his life? She took another step forward, and this time no one tried to stop her. I'm not some protester. I'm not here for politics. I'm a mother, a teacher, a voter who believed your promises. And I'm watching my son die because those promises were lies. The silence in the arena was absolute. Even the usual whispers and coughs had stopped. Every eye was fixed on Sarah, standing there with Miguel's photos in one hand and his medical bills in the other. So here's my question, Mr. President. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper now, but somehow it carried to every corner of the arena. What are you going to tell Miguel? What are you going to tell all the Miguels out there? That making America great doesn't include saving their lives. Trump gripped the podium, his usual confident demeanor slipping. For once, there was no immediate, Response. No quick deflection or counterattack. Sarah felt Margaret's hand squeeze hers as cameras flashed and phones recorded. The moment stretched out, electric with possibility and pain. What happened next would change everything. Chapter 3. The truth hits. Home. The crowd went dead quiet. Sarah pulled out her phone, showing more pictures of Miguel. This was him last Christmas, she sobbed. This is him now. No hair, skin and bones. 12 years old and fighting for his life. She turned to the crowd. How many of you are one bad diagnosis away from losing everything? How many of you can't sleep because of medical bills? People started nodding. A woman in the front row was crying. Even Trump stood silent at the podium. I'm not some protester, Sarah said. I voted for you. I believed you. But my boy is dying, and nobody in power seems to care. The video of Sarah went viral that night. Not because it was political, but because it was real. Raw. True. A local news reporter found her at the hospital the next day. She was sitting next to Miguel, helping him eat soup. People want to hear your story, the reporter said. Sarah shook her head. My story. Look around this hospital. Every room has a story. Parents choosing between rent and medicine. Kids fighting cancer while their families fight bankruptcy. That's the real story. The reporter asked what she hoped would change. Sarah looked at Miguel, managing a weak smile as he slurped his soup. I just want my boy to live, she said. I want him to grow up, fall in love, have his own kids someday. Is that too much to ask in the richest country in the world? That night, as Miguel slept, Sarah's phone kept buzzing with messages. Other parents sharing their stories, people offering to help, even some politicians wanting to talk. But Sarah just held her son's hand, listening to him breathe. Sometimes the simplest truth is the strongest, a mother's love for her child. And Sarah would keep fighting, not for politics, not for attention, but for Miguel, for her boy.